Hi, welcome to the first podcast of this series. Welcome to the first podcast of this series, and thanks for tuning in. I hope you kept yourselves safe and protected during this pandemic, and I'm sending you all some serious love and life vibes tonight before we kick off the series and head down a more darker vibe. It's taken me years to find out what made my heart pump. So I just wanted to do something worthwhile, and over the years of researching different things, I never really found anything that made my heart pump as much as this. So I decided, I've wanted to do a podcast for a very long time. I've covered celebrities, and I've covered politics, and I've covered science, and I've covered space, and I've covered lots of different things over the last few years. I dabbled in Alex Jones conspiracies and talked about them, and so I've been going strong for a good few years, and I was there's so many podcasts out there, and they all have their own unique vision, vibe, and connection to their audience, and they have a real true purpose. So I was right, I'm gonna go with the one thing that I think about every day, at least once, that makes me wonder, that makes me question, makes me think, and that would be missing people. So about a year ago I started looking into missing people, and I started with America, of course, because that's where most of the information is coming from. So then the Maddie McCann case really struck me, because I was only growing up when all that kind of happened, and it was all over the media, it was all over the news, it was all over the telly. You couldn't switch channels without hearing about poor little Maddie and what her parents were going through and what had happened, and it was just very heart-wrenching, and it stuck with me. So I kind of guess I grew up always wondering what happened to that little girl. So when I got older and we got into the age of computers and stuff, I remember the first 2 or 3 things I googled were what happened to Maddie McCann, and 2 other things, of course, but that was one of them. And so I just guess as soon as I got the technology and the opportunity to gain more wisdom and knowledge about certain things, I grabbed the opportunities and I took them and tried to fill my head up with as much information as possible. I'm not sure why exactly these certain cases stood out to me, but they did, and I guess I wouldn't just think about the case, I think about the people, and I'd watch their interviews and I think, oh my gosh, imagine going through that. So the impact that Madeleine McCann's case had on me was massive, because at a young enough age it made me open my mind and think, oh my gosh, the world is not as safe as my parents or my family would like me to believe, and this little girl just vanished, and you have to be careful out there. That's when in Ireland I think people start telling the children more about the man in the van who was going around kidnapping kids, and everyone got really vigilant and protective over their children, which I can completely understand now as a parent myself. So so basically the main information that I have researched is coming from America, Canada, and the UK. There is not a lot of information in Ireland about certain things, so I started in America, and I started with the national parks across America, and the main reason is because legally missing people don't need to be reported missing if they go missing in a national park, which in my opinion is a bit of a stretch when it comes to how we protect people, how we account for people, and I think anyone should be entitled to go to a national park or woodland and feel safe or know that like if they go there and anything happens, that people will notice, people will report it, and people will go looking for them. I'm not sure why this is the case, but I'll look into it more, and as we go further into the podcast series, I will like give you more information about what's kind of going over their heads in America, and then I will also like highlight what's going on in Ireland. So when I was looking into the national parks across America and the fact that they don't have to report people missing legally, I also looked into a book about missing children. So there's 5 children who went missing across North America, and there is a book called Missing 411 by David Polides. I hope I said that right. And he basically just covers like all the missing cases and what's going on with the missing cases, and keeps us up to date, and he pinpoints all the similarities between the cases, and tries to bring a bit of hope and comfort to the families involved in these vanishing circumstances. I guess after looking into that, I decided just to look at my own country in Ireland, and there was a lot of missing cases that have gone back to like the early 50s, and I went onto like the National Missing People page of Ireland. I think it's sponsored by the Gardaí or ran by the Gardaí, and I was just in shock at how many people there are like actively missing, and nobody has a clue as to where they're gone or why, and there's been no leads, and families and friends are just left wondering what happened and hope to get an answer one day. But unfortunately, a majority of parents in these cases and family members have passed away without an answer as to what exactly happened to the person that they loved. I've watched many interviews now of family members who are in the position of like actively looking for members of their family or friends, and sorry about that, that's my phone going off, and it's really heartbreaking. So I really hope like maybe even doing this can highlight some of the cases, bring them back into the public light. Maybe someone could come forward with a bit of information. I'll have a bit more information about that in a little bit, the number of who to call if you know anything, and how much they're offering as a reward for any information in finding these missing people. So in Ireland, the first case that actually caught my attention, that was a woman, was Tina Satchwell, and her husband's missing case. Like, I watched interviews over and over again of her husband, and especially the one where he's in the Red FM studio, and I watched that over and over for about a week, and I watched it with someone else as well, and I was like asking their opinion, like, what do you think, what do you reckon, and what's going on, and this, that and the other, and they had really valid points, and kind of opened my mind a bit more to thinking in a certain way and thinking in another way, and then thinking in a different perspective, and so I will actually cover Tina Satchwell's case through the series, so hopefully I will see you there for that. I'm going to do this podcast split, so there is 11 missing people in this series, and then we will have a bonus episode at the end, and then in the middle of these episodes I will have a break, so we will be ending the first half with Tina Satchwell's case, because I want to do it in 2 parts, so that's why we will have a bonus episode, because the bonus episode will be her part 2 of her case, because it's quite mind-boggling. There's lots of details, there's a lot of ground to cover, there's a lot of days to cover, there's a lot of areas to cover, and there's a lot of interviews and stuff that I want to highlight and show you guys and talk about it as well, because I think that there's a lot of information in the interviews and what we know so far about her case. So stick around for that, and thanks for tuning in right now, because it's kind of shy to do this. I know like people have heard me on my Facebook and things like that, and I've done like demos and runs of podcasts with different things in the past, like spooky stories and history of Ireland and celebrities and politics and culture and whatever. So I really hope that you will enjoy this. I actually started this on Friday the 13th in August, which is pretty cool. I had a few technical glitches and I didn't actually get to record it until this Saturday, and I hope to get this uploaded before the Monday. So I hope you're having a good weekend out there. As I'm recording this, I have my dinner cooking. It's a roast chicken and it smells divine. My daughter's in bed and she kind of dodged her foot when she was on her VR playing a virtual reality game, and she took the virtual reality literal and forgot about her actual environment and surroundings and kind of just went sideways on her foot, walking on something. And I'm always telling her, pick things up off the ground, because you will hurt yourself. And voila, she hurt herself. I comfort her, she's okay, she's in bed. I have been her maid ever since. Everything's been handed to her. So yeah, so anyway, mind yourselves out there, and if you're playing on the VR, please clear your space, be careful, and make sure you know your surroundings before you stick on that virtual reality set, because you can literally be sucked into another world and forget what's going on around you. So anyway, in all my years of yapping about stuff and things, oh, by the way, while we're here, everybody knows that Stuff and Things is out of Walking Dead, and if you don't, I do. But do any of you watch The Walking Dead? Because I've heard that this is the last season to air. Now, I watched it not knowing it was the last season, but my better half at the time kind of had the idea. He says, this is the season to kill it, and I was like, no way. But it happened. So let me know what you think about that. I'm interested to know your thoughts on production of last season, because in my opinion, the last season got very Disney-like and it kind of lost its feel, you know. And I'd like to know what you think about that. And what about the ending? Like, even the thoughts of it is making me stutter, because that show started when my daughter was born, and just to have that over, and then look at the age of her now and all the years that have passed, everything that's gone on between the start and the end of this is just incredible. And we started off with a zombie apocalypse and we ended the series with an actual pandemic, which is crazy. And also the comic books, if you read them, let me know what you think. So I'm totally rambling on here, and that is something my nearest and dearest have gotten used to, and I appreciate them a lot for it, because you have to be thankful for your loved ones. They pick us up whenever we're feeling down. They know our deepest feelings and thoughts. They bring joy to our lives, and they make life worth living and waking up to every day. So it would be pretty lonely in life without our families and friends. So could you imagine someone you love just vanishing into thin air one day and never ever have an answer as to why? To be honest, my heart goes out to anyone who's ever had to deal with that situation, and mainly the reason that I took my time with this one, as it's a sensitive topic and it really does remain a cold case. Most of the missing cases are cold cases, so hopefully by covering these cases we can shed some light on these missing people, and more information will come to light, like I said earlier on. So this is kicking off the series with the my daughter called me. So I'm kicking off the series with the Vanishing Triangle, and tonight I want to tell you about an American woman with Irish roots called Annie McCarrick, who vanished from County Wicklow. So basically, the Vanishing Triangle is an area in Ireland where many women have gone missing, and I will cover that as well through the series. So we will have an episode and I will have a chat with you guys about exactly what the Vanishing Triangle is. For now though, we're just going to cover the people, because I think it's more important to cover the people than the place, and I hope you guys are with me on that one, and give me a thumbs up on this video if you are. So the sources that I have mainly used and come across for the missing Irish people are Ireland Crime Wars, RTE Archives, Irish Times, Crime Call, and then witness statements. So Annie McCarrick was 27, 5'8" with brown hair. She liked music and having the crack. She had Irish roots. Her grandmother and her grandfather were Irish, and her dad was obviously Irish, and he was a detective in New York. She was the child of John and Nancy McCarrick, and they were from Long Island, New York. And as we know, she was residing in Sandymount in Ireland. So Annie went to St. Patrick's Teaching College, but she moved to Maynooth. And before all of that kind of happened, she came back to Dublin after 3 years. So her mum went to JFK Airport with her to wish her off back to Dublin. And that's what we know so far. The reason for her change in school is actually unknown, but we do know that Annie loved Maynooth School more. Annie would visit her parents every year at the summer and Christmas, and she was really sociable and would visit both sides of her mum and dad's families. The last CCTV footage of Annie was at a local Spar and AIB bank, which is now being rebranded as a Tesco's. She bought shopping, made calls from Sandymount phone box. One phone call was asking a friend to go for a walk, but the friend said no because she had a foot injury. So she also called work and said she might collect her wage, which she didn't. She changed her bank account branch that day to elsewhere as well, from Clondalkin to Sandymount. And these 3 places are just a few minutes walk from her apartment. So the local Spar and the bank and the phone box were literally minutes away from her house. But we've no indication or trace of her making plans to meet anyone else that day. Now, Annie vanished from her front door and she left her shopping outside the door, and she was spotted getting on a bus to Enniskerry, which is the foothill of the Wicklow Mountains. She was clearly in a hurry, so we know that Annie left her bags of shopping outside her door, and she ran away. She was obviously trying to catch a bus, or she was going to meet somebody. And before they caught a bus, we're not sure. We just know that she vanished from her door and she left her shopping outside. Annie had a birthday party arranged for the next day, and Annie's mum was due the following week, so we have ruled out suicide or planned disappearance. Annie went missing on March the 26th, 1993. The last known possible whereabouts was Johnny Fox's pub in County Wicklow. An eyewitness called Sam Doran, which was pub staff at the night, accounted that he stopped her from coming out of the bathroom and said there is a cover charge, and she apparently rummaged her bag for money, but the guy behind her paid the charge for the two of them. So we have this backed up by another eyewitness, and she was possibly asked for a drink at the door by a man, but this is all unconfirmed sightings. But she was last seen with a man in his 20s. His description was a wax jacket, leather pants. His height was 5'8", maybe 5'10". He was clean shaven with a squarish face and a fit body. And I will leave a link below to where you can find that description, and you will also see a flash of his face throughout this video. It was said that Annie was due to meet a pal at the Wicklow Mountains, but her pal didn't go anyway because her foot injury, so Annie went alone instead, considering all the information. March 27th, pals Hilary and Rita show up for the meal, but there's no answer because they were coming for the birthday party meal. But when they got there, they knocked on the door, nobody answered. They got a bit antsy. They decided to call her parents, explain the situation. Annie's mum starts panicking and decides to come to Ireland. She reports her daughter missing in the guard station. Now, this is exactly where all the information stops. There is no further clues. Nobody has any answers. All we know is that there was no body, there was no clothing, there was nothing left behind. There has never been an indication that this girl was meeting someone privately and didn't tell anyone. There was never an indication that this girl was not mentally stable. So that's why we've ruled out suicide and planned disappearances, because her actual personality and character did not resonate or connect with somebody who would actually do one of those two things. So I guess we have to get into the main public theory, right? And that is serial killers, or a serial killer. So when I was watching Paul Williams and his team chatting, in their opinion, they assume that this is the result of a serial killer. And they aren't the only ones. A lot of people that I have watched on YouTube or come across online, or even articles by journalists. I just take some water. They all believe that this is the work of a serial killer. Now, when you have one case, you say, right, okay, well, maybe this was a tragic accident, maybe this was a kidnapping, maybe this was a planned murder. That's fair enough. But we're actually talking about a triangle of women who have gone missing since the late 80s, okay? And it's all been in this area. So as we get into this more, I will cover the other women, the other areas. But right now we're going to focus on what the public feel could have happened to poor Annie McCarrick. So we have a notorious suspect in Ireland, and that's Larry Murphy. He was convicted in 2001 for rape and attempted murder, and from what we know is he raped a woman and tried to strangle her in the Wicklow Mountains. And the reason that he is the most notorious suspect in this case and many others is because this one in general was near the Wicklow Mountains, so they assume, and people assume, and it could be very possible, that Annie McCarrick was one of many of Larry Murphy's victims, unfortunately. We have another theory that if it is serial killers, and we do have unknown suspects, it is 2 or more, no less than 5. It could be a gang, a family, or a group who are organised, stalking and calculating murders. So there's the 2 main theories of what people think are happening in the Vanishing Triangle and what could have possibly happened to Annie McCarrick that day she vanished from her front door. Because we all know that no matter how much of a hurry you are in, you're not going to just leave your fresh shopping at your front door and not put them away, because we all pay for the goods and we want to put them away so they don't go off, no matter how much of a hurry you are in. So what's your idea on that? Like, what do you think could be so important that Annie left her shopping outside her door and disappeared? So basically, if it was a serial killer, or it was serial killers, or it was Larry Murphy, the only theory there is she was at her door, someone offered to take her for a drink, which was the man in question, and that's who the guy Sam Doran seen Annie McCarrick with that night. So there's a lot of questions surrounding that. And if you take the serial killer theory, or the serial killers theory, I guess it would kind of give you the chills, because Ireland is so small, and it sounds like whoever done this to Annie, if this is the case, Annie knew them and she trusted them and she was willing to go with them wherever they asked her to go, because from what we know there was no signs of a struggle or fighting. So that clearly indicates that she went willingly with whoever it may have been that stopped her at her front door, which could have been that guy, So you could have seen her. Hiya, do you want to go for a drink? She said, yeah, no bother. He maybe said, I have to get a bus in 5 minutes. She was like, right, grand, let's go now. So they decided to have a drink. Maybe that's when they seen her get on the bus, because she was getting on the bus with him because he was gone. So she decided, oh well, I'm going to go away for a while anyway. Maybe it doesn't really matter about the shopping. There's many theories and reasons behind that kind of perspective, so I get it. So now I'm going to just kind of get on to like my theory. My theory is really outside the box, and it's basically alien abduction. Now I did tell you guys that this series is gonna like cover like alien abductions, culture, serial abductions, murders, things like that, because I think these are very vital to cover, and more people should know about certain things, especially in Ireland and their country, because the more we know, the better, and the more we can kind of like protect ourselves. So yeah, my theory is alien abductions, and the evidence there is because there's never any clothing in these cases. So I'm just going to start with Annie's case because that's where we are today. So in Annie's case, there was no clothing, there was no shoes, and there was no body ever found. Okay, and in UFO sightings and alien abduction cases, there is a mind control narrative. So maybe Annie was standing at her door, something happened, something overtook her mind, she decided to drop the bags, and she went into a hypnotized state of mind, and whatever happened from there happened from there. There was an issue of Man to Man magazine in 1953 with an article by Leroy Thorpe, and it's called Are the Flying Saucers Kidnapping Humans? And then he was also saying that in a lot of the cases that anytime there is an alien or UFO abduction or case, that the family are usually involved in the military, or they're in a residence near a military base. Most of the reports of abduction and UFO sightings are made by adults, but sometimes they're young children. None of them ever suffer from any sort of psychiatric illness either, which proves that what they're saying is really happening, what they went through is really there, and it can't be debunked by some sort of mental illness. So how it goes down is they capture the abductee, right? So the abductee is somehow rendered incapable of resisting, and then they're taken from terrestrial surroundings to an alien spacecraft. Okay, so let's say Annie McCarrick was standing there, she had the bag, she was about to go into her house, spaceship came over, smashed the light over her head, she went hypnotic, whatever happened after that. Maybe they took her up into the spaceship, they decided to do exams and procedures. They are invasive psychological procedures, and on occasions they stimulate behavioural situations to train and also test human beings, and our reproductive organs are also studied on, and there has been cases of apparent impregnation of human women with alien babies, and before the baby's due they wake up and the baby's gone, which can also be considered a phantom pregnancy. And then there's like psychological elements of that happening to someone. They could be suffering with some sort of illusion or whatever disorder, but we'll cover that as well further on, hopefully throughout these series. Not this first series, maybe the second or third. So then the third thing that happens is basically the abductors communicate with the human that's abducted, and they interact with specific individuals for certain purposes, usually through telepathic powers, and most of the time, if they do speak to you telepathically, they will use your native language. So if you're French and you speak English every day, they'll speak to you in French. If you're Irish and you speak German every day, they'll speak to you in Irish. If it's crazy. But if you don't know your native language, they will speak to you in the language that they know. They can communicate with you in that's best for you and best for them. And then sometimes when humans are abducted, they're given a tour of the whole spaceship. And some researchers say that this is not true, and people are just waffling and speculating and adding parts on to real experiences. Sometimes these multiple places inside the ship. Sorry about that there, guys. My phone went off and I'm just putting it on silent. So these have been debunked. These ideas have been debunked, and apparently no human has ever actually seen around a ship unless it is an elite human being who has like a big major purpose that they consider one of them or in a higher rank than certain human beings on Earth. So the evidence of all of this basically comes because the human abductee always forgets the majority of their experience, either out of fear, medical intervention, or both. So what can happen is they can come back to the Earth realm and they can have flashbacks, and they can get post-traumatic stress, and they can have nightmares, and they can have night terrors, and all these crazy psychological things are happening because they have gone through this experience, and it's not real in our reality, but it is real, and then it becomes real in their reality. So it's just kind of a lot of coping going on there, and it can really boggle the mind. So we'll get into kind of like that as well further in the future, and I'll cover like signs of abductions and stuff like that. So basically, like when a human is returned, they have this like mad sense of love. So the only way like I would describe it for myself that we would understand as a society would be like taking ecstasy, or they describe it as like a mystical experience, like taking magic mushrooms or shrooms, and it's like accompanied with a feeling of like being at one with the world, with the universe, with people, with God, with themselves, or who have abducted them. So we're not sure if this is like a metaphysical change or medical tampering, but we're not sure exactly why this happens at this time, but it does wear off eventually. But after that, then the person that's been abducted has to cope with the psychological, physical, and social aspects of this experience. So my conclusion here is kind of like, what if Annie never got to return to remember or talk about what happened to her? Or what if she did return and her mind was wiped and she's living a different reality somewhere else as someone else, you know? I kind of like this theory more than the whole serial killers, Larry Murphy thing, because in my mind there's always hope that this person will come back, because what happened to them was something out of their control, but it wasn't like kind of dangerous to their life, and they can be just kind of dropped home or dropped wherever and live on in a reality. So the reason I have come to this conclusion is because starting in 1993, and I just remember Annie went missing on March the 26th, 1993, which gave a couple of days before her actual report of being missing. So between them few days, if it was a serial killer or serial killers, they had a lot of time to kind of do what they had to do before anyone noticed what was going on, and they had plenty of time to cover up what went on. If it comes to alien abduction, it makes sense that people didn't notice the time that she was gone missing, because as we know, these extraterrestrial beings have a lot of control over our time, and over our universe. So that is exactly why I think that it's possible alien abduction, because it's like the time around everybody kind of stopped for a few days, and then when it started again, they all kind of went, oh, where is Annie gone? And then the red light went off and the alarm was sounded, and everything started from there. So like I said there a minute ago, in 1993 everything kind of started kicking off in that Wicklow area, and RTE reported a weekly science program, and I think it was called Light Beings Ahead or Light Years Ahead, and it reported a lot about UFO sightings and reports in the Wicklow area. And because this was going on, a lot of reports started to surface, like, and a lot of people were, you know, getting involved, and they were coming forward and saying that they were being abducted on a regular basis, or they had been abducted, or they have seen UFOs, or they were literally sucked up into a UFO by a light, and explained their whole experiences. And because of people coming forward and explaining their experiences in the best detail that they can, this is how we have accountability of what goes on, what happens, and who does it to you when you are abducted. So in ways, they kind of let us remember certain things, and, you know, I'm not sure if that's like to make sure we're scared, or we are being used as a way to like spread the message that this is going on and this is what's happening and this is what they can do. You know, there's a lot of reasons why they would possibly abduct us, and you know, we do know that our sexual reproduction systems are very interesting to them. So Wicklow seems to be like a hotspot, and it's given us most of our information over the 1980s and 1990s. And on March the 1st, 1996, there was a source close to a certain organisation, and they witnessed a hovering disc, and it shot away. So this was a mad experience for the man, and he had a wife and a young child in the car, and they planned to go to the country and they had such a mad experience in the end, you know. And two other incidents immediately came to mind in dealing with Wicklow. The first case actually occurred just over Wexford border around 1984 or 1981, and it was 6 miles south of Arklow. There was a person coming home at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was just going for a stroll around Castletown village, and he decided to report what he seen, and that was basically a round shaped object that had lights coming from underneath. And then in 1996 in Mount Kennedy area, there was a sighting that was described as an oval electric blue light that darted about the mountains, and it triggered a lot of people to ring into the local radio station that night to tell about what they've seen. So it wasn't just one person who seen it, it was a collective of people who've seen it, and they decided, like, I have to tell somebody about this. So the best thing to do at the time in Ireland was to always ring a radio station. So that's what they done. And then in 1996 there was an unidentified craft over Mayo's Knockshrine, and a lot of people heard about that, and then they decided to write a few articles about it, and I think it was covered in the RTE archives, and it was in the media. And so we have an RTE report in March 31st in 1993 by Lorraine Smith, and it was called Bizarre Lights in the Sky Across Ireland, so you can check that out for yourselves, and you can see like how this all kind of started like in 1993, and then Annie McCarrick was kind of like the first person to go missing in that area at that time while all this activity was going on. So my opinion is alien abduction, and I know it's like massively outside the box, but like I said already, I would rather consider that than something terrible happening to this woman, because, you know, Ireland, like I said, is a small place, and we don't want to be freaking each other out and thinking mad stuff's happening if it's not happening. And you know, like, lots of us in Ireland do believe in UFOs and aliens, and we have a lot of like mythical history and culture there with like leprechauns and fairies and other things. So I'll get into that as well over the course of these series, which will be so much fun. Now, I had a friend and they had their own theory, and they reckoned that what happened to Annie and what's going on in the Vanishing Triangle and everything that happened after Annie's disappearance were actually to do with cult sacrifices. So in RTE, there was actually a report to back up this theory, and the reporter was Kieran Wood, and he basically wrote an article about the Cult Awareness Centre opening, and it opened in the Irish church premises, and it opened because there was so many cults starting off in Ireland and non-official religious groups and organisations, and he just wanted to provide proper information about these cults and false religions that are here in Ireland. And a man called Noel Dean said that he hoped to be able to provide proper information regarding the cults and false religions that are here in Ireland. So Noel Dean was the secretary at the centre of former members of the Unification Church. So basically there's over like 10,000 active cults in the world, and in Ireland there's like way too many to mention right now. But they are active and they have sacrificial tendencies, and a lot of cults have the common one, which is human sacrifice, and a lot of people know that. Like, no one is too arrogant to know this goes on, even if they don't want to talk about it. And basically human sacrifice is the act of killing one or more humans as part of a ritual, which is usually intended to please or appease gods to carry out a prophecy. And then in the Irish Times, we had a report in March 22nd, 2000, and the reporter was unknown, and they spoke with a guy called Mike, and he was a field worker of Dialogue Ireland, and his duty is to report to a board of representatives of the main Christian churches. So basically, he tells members of the pastoral community, families, clergy, teachers and other professionals about these active cults and what to look out for, and how to spot cult activity, how to make sure you don't get involved in cult activity, and genuinely just gives you the ins and outs of what's going on right now. But Dialogue Ireland replaced the Catholic Church, and that was a Catholic Church run cult awareness centre in 1992. It was changed then into Dialogue Ireland, and it basically focused on Scientology, the Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses and new churches that pop up with Eastern or Christian foundations, or human potential movements. So they promote the real, truthful information that we really need to know. And if you want to contact them, you can at www.esatclear.ie/Dialogue Ireland, or on 018309384 if you want to know any more about cults that are in Ireland, or what you need to look out for, or just have a general inquiry. So I think I've covered every single layer to what could have possibly happened to Annie McCarrick. We've covered all the theories, and it is one or the other, and it is one of many, and it is one that we will never have the answer to. And as it stands, as I record this, an Irish Gardaí are offering a reward of €10,000 to anybody, and I mean anybody, that has any information about the whereabouts of any of the missing people that I cover in this series. So if you have any information on Annie McCarrick or any of the women that I mention, please phone up your local Garda station, tell them what you know. I know it's a cold case, I know it's been so many years, but sometimes years later witnesses pop up, and people get laid to rest. So if you have any information whatsoever, please contact your local Garda station, and let them know whatever you know, because you're doing a big service to the people of Ireland. As a woman myself, covering these cases is kind of daunting in a way, because it's like, right, well, there's clearly something going on, and it's been going on a long time, and more people are starting to talk about it now, which is great, and more people are highlighting the Vanishing Triangle and talking about the fact that there could possibly be a serial killer or a cult active or a massive alien abduction in Ireland. And these are just one of many cases. And the fact that in America, in national parks, people don't have to be reported missing makes me kind of think, like, how many people are going missing in Ireland and they aren't being reported, or we don't hear about it in the media. And just at the start of this year, a guy went missing in America, and he was Irish, and he went missing in one of the national parks. So I want to cover that as well, and I will be covering that as well through this series. Not this series 1, but I mean the series as a whole. So I really appreciate you tuning in. I really appreciate you listening to what I've had to say. I really appreciate you sharing and caring and liking and supporting my channel, and having so much patience, because, you know, I could have come on, I could have done a podcast, and I could have just done about anything, and I could have done about something like that's materialistic or meaningless or soulless or didn't have any depth. And I was like, you know, try this, try that. This, yes, because I'm actually helping. I'm actually doing something worthwhile. I'm doing something that could help people, and also protecting many women in Ireland, because the more people that know about this, the better. So I really, really, really appreciate you tuning in, and until next time, stay safe out there, stay protected, and until further notice, these cases remain unresolved.